They say madness runs quiet at first, like a whisper beneath the crown. But in the court of Persia, around 530 BC, that whisper became a scream. Cambyses II, the son of Cyrus the Great, inherited the largest empire the world had ever seen. Yet power did not crown him. It consumed him. His father was a builder, a unifier. Cambyses was something else entirely. He believed he was chosen by the gods to stretch Persia across the ends of the earth, and to burn away all who stood in his path, even his own blood. His first taste of blood came at the coronation feast. His younger brother Bardia, beloved by the nobles, raised a toast. Cambyses watched the crowd cheer for him, and something twisted behind his cold, dark eyes. Weeks later, on a royal hunt, Cambyses accidentally drove a spear clean through Bardia's chest. When the body was carried back, he smiled faintly and said the gods had chosen the stronger son. No one dared speak, but that was only the beginning. Cambyses turned paranoia into policy. He summoned nobles, accused them of plotting treason without evidence, and ordered them buried alive beneath the palace stones. Eyewitnesses wrote of muffled screams echoing under the marble floors as court music played above. Servants vanished for looking at him the wrong way. The high priests whispered that he had stopped sleeping. They saw him pacing the palace halls at night, barefoot, muttering to himself, his eyes wide and red like burning coals. Then came the invasion of Egypt, a war he claimed the gods demanded. He marched across burning deserts, slaughtering those who lagged behind, drinking from stagnant pools and laughing as men begged for water. When he reached Memphis, he slaughtered the sacred bull Apis before the horrified priests, declaring their god was mortal like any man. Some say he carved the beast open while it was still alive, grinning as blood splashed his robes. His generals began to fear that their king was no longer a man at all, but something hollow, a vessel for chaos. And as Cambyses crowned himself Pharaoh of Egypt, he whispered to his captains that he would not stop there. He would march on Carthage, on Ethiopia, even on the gods themselves. But something dark was already waiting for him, back home. While Cambyses slaughtered his way through Egypt, whispers rose in Persia. Bardia, the brother he had murdered, was alive. The rumor spread like wildfire. Town criers shouted Bardia's name in the markets. Soldiers deserted Cambyses' army to march home and join him. But Cambyses knew the truth. He had seen Bardia's eyes go glassy in the sand. He raged. He accused his generals of betrayal, whipping them in front of the troops. He ordered entire caravans buried alive in the desert, claiming they carried messages to Bardia. Meanwhile, a man claiming to be Bardia seized the Persian throne. He was actually Gaumata, a Magian priest, but the people didn't care. They saw in him a chance to escape Cambyses' blood-soaked reign. In Memphis, Cambyses smashed mirrors, saying they were spying on him. He screamed at invisible enemies and ordered his own soldiers to stab the Nile when it flooded, calling it treacherous water. His closest officers tried to restrain him, but he drew his sword and cut one of them down mid-sentence. The others fell silent, too afraid to breathe. Then news came. Gaumata had declared himself king of kings. Cambyses gathered what remained of his sanity. He mounted his horse to ride home and reclaim his throne. But as he leapt into the saddle, his sword slipped from its sheath and pierced his own thigh. The wound festered. As he lay dying, feverish and trembling, he whispered to his captains, "I killed my brother. I killed Bardia. This throne is cursed." Then he laughed. a hollow, broken sound, and died. Or so the official records say. By the time Cambyses limped into Susa, the stench of his wound had become unbearable. Flies swarmed him like living chains. He rode slumped sideways in the saddle, lips cracked, eyes wild and fever bright. The city he had once ruled as an iron god did not greet him with trumpets, only silence. No soldiers lined the streets, no banners flew from the citadel. The gates stood open as if abandoned. His escort dismounted in fear. "My king, something is wrong." But Cambyses only grinned, a broken curve of teeth. "No," he rasped, "something is alive." Inside the royal halls, the smell of incense curled through the air, and there, upon the marble throne where once sat Cyrus the Great, was Bardia. At least, the thing wearing Bardia's face. He was wrapped in silk, golden circlet on his brow, flanked by Persian nobles who bowed like reeds in the wind. His voice, when it came, was soft and cold as a snake's tongue. "Brother," he said without rising, "you look unwell." For a heartbeat, the entire world stopped. Cambyses staggered forward, sword trembling in his hand. "I killed you," he whispered. The man smiled. "Then who am I?" Laughter rippled through the nobles like a contagion. It was quiet, nervous laughter, the kind men used to keep death away. Cambyses roared like a wounded beast and lunged, but his leg collapsed under him. He crashed to the marble floor, the sword clattering from his grip. No one moved to help him. "Look at you," the false Bardia said. "You brought the empire to its knees and left your mind behind in Egypt." Guards seized Cambyses, dragging him across the polished stone like a slaughtered ox. He screamed, spittle flying, calling them traitors, jackals, carrion eaters. They threw him into a dark cell beneath the palace, a chamber once reserved for mad prophets and cursed priests. He raved in the dark for hours, clawing at the walls, whispering his father's name, then his brother's, then his own, until they bled together. But somewhere in that pit of shadows, a clarity like shattered glass pierced through the fever. They would erase him. They would burn his name from the scrolls, cut his face from the stone reliefs, and let this impostor rewrite the world. Cambyses swore through cracked lips that he would not vanish quietly. When the guards opened the door the next morning, they found the walls scrawled with blood. Not words, just symbols, ancient ones that none of them recognized. Symbols older than Persia, older than kings. Cambyses lay on the floor, smiling through his fever. "Tell your master," he hissed, "that ghosts have longer memories than men." And then he rose, chains rattling, eyes blazing with the fire of someone who had nothing left to lose. They brought him from the cell like a corpse they had forgotten to bury. Chains bit into his wrists, and each step left a smear of dried blood on the polished stone floor. The halls of Susa were silent as he passed. No cheers, no jeers, only the shivering of men who dared not look at him. Cambyses smiled at that. Fear was the last crown left to him. In the throne hall, the false Bardia waited, perched like a vulture on their father's seat. He wore robes heavy with gold, and yet his hands trembled. The nobles stood in a crescent behind him, eyes wide, not with loyalty, but with the terror of men who had seen too many kings die. Cambyses lifted his head and spoke, voice raw but steady. "You think you've won," he said, "but this empire isn't yours. It never was. It belongs to the ghosts we carry." The false king smirked, but it faltered when Cambyses began to laugh, a hoarse, broken laugh that echoed from the marble like the rattle of bones. Then, with a speed no one expected, Cambyses tore free of the guard's grip, lunged forward, and drove his chains into his own chest. Gasps shattered the room. Blood soaked his torn robes as he collapsed at the foot of the throne, grinning through the crimson. "Strike me down, and you make me legend," he croaked. "Erase me, and I will haunt you forever." His eyes found the false Bardias, and for a moment something ancient and cold passed between them. Then Cambyses exhaled one final ragged breath and was still. The nobles stared, frozen. The impostor tried to speak, but no sound came, because even dead, Cambyses filled the room like a storm. They buried him in secret at night, without ceremony. No name was carved on the stone, no prayers were spoken, yet whispers spread like fire that the mad king had cursed the throne, that the blood of Cyrus the Great would never rest, that the empire would crack like old marble, and the boy they called Darius Strahor was already sharpening his knives. In the end, the man they tried to erase became eternal, a shadow cast over every crown that followed.